apologies from Bruce Robertson for lateness and Nicole Oral for lateness. Are there any others? Right, somebody like to move those, please?
I'll move.
Thank you, Councillor McKeown. Seconded, Councillor McPhail. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Marvellous. Public forums, petitions and deputations.
My name is mentioned in the disclaimer later on, so I just wanted to dignify that there's my name is there. I'm aware of it. So.
Great, and it is just a list. Thank you. Public forum, petitions and deputations. Confirmation of minutes of the meeting of Wednesday 24th of February. You have them in front of you. Somebody like to move those, please?
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Seconded, Councillor McPhail. Any issues from those? Questions? Corrections? Marvellous. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. I've had no notifications of extraordinary or urgent business. No questions, so we'll move on to item 8, and I will just, for your benefit, update you that I have had some discussions with Amy and Bruce obliquely around Councillor McCallum's suggestion that we have some presentations at the beginning of the meeting. We're still working through that because there are some sensitivities around some of that information, but the temporary starter for 10 list that we've put together is Aon Insurance, RSHL, JB Ware, the auditor potentially, our legal advisors and Great South. So just cogitate away on those and get back to Amy and I if there's anything else that you think we should consider, and then we might workshop that through at a later date. Does that work?
And Chair, people like the auditors, there will schedule times that they will need to come and speak to us anyway as we go through the audit process. So some of that will be dictated by organisational processes.
Yeah, so just as much as I like to say it's still a work in progress because it sounds like an easy task, it's actually proving to be a little more difficult than that, and Bruce has been busy, so we just need to sit in the same room and talk that through.
The main issue is that there isn't a, while it's in that first part of the agenda, it may actually be publicly excluded that we actually have that, or it may even be a workshop that we put together to do 2 or 3. So the concept's there, it's just where is the best way for delivery. And that's why we need to just talk some of that through and see where it sits best. Yeah. So if you've got any other suggestions, please send them through. Right, moving on to, unless anybody else has got a report. Apologies. Okay, thank you. Item 9, General Manager's Organisational Development and Transformation Report, which is quite a title.
It is quite a title.
9.1, let's call it, a policy update.
So this is should be a reasonably straightforward policy update on our request for information under the Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act. This is updated with reference to a change in the Privacy Act that happened in December last year. You'll see there are very few changes, but as it is a council policy, it needs to come through to council for approval. And just reflecting that change in legislation. Any thoughts or comments?
Happy to move that, Madam Chair. I think that's straightforward, and there's no issues being raised in the paper about the process.
No minor changes. So we have a mover, seconder, please.
So seconded.
Councillor Beard. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Item 2, South Island Council Collective for Insurance.
So this paper is really just an update for council. We've had conversations through our LTP discussions about insurance, and also off the back of the floods last year, how we manage our disaster reserves and get the balance between what we insure for and what we hold reserves for. And we will, through the course of the year, be running a workshop on that. But last week there was a meeting of some South Island councils who come together to collectively insure our assets. They typically are the smaller councils, and we collectively insure so that we can get a better rate and better consideration from our insurers in London. This paper just prefaces the fact that whilst we have been collectively insured, there hasn't been a memorandum of understanding or any sort of agreement that has sat behind that other than a collective understanding. So that at the meeting last week, we talked about how do we formalise that agreement, and that work is being driven by the QLDC. They're talking about a memorandum of understanding, but I think we will move to a legal agreement there. And we also had a presentation from our insurers, Aon, who go to London on our collective behalf. And so just a brief update from that is that the insurance market is hardening considerably. Clearly with COVID, the Lloyd's Group took a bit hit last year with about $1 billion in unfunded, I guess, or unanticipated claims. So that insurance market is hardening, which means that in relation to us, we can expect increasing premiums, but we can also expect, the insurance market to be looking more closely at what they do and don't insure, and understanding that insurance is for unseen events, things like climate change, which are becoming more and more, or climate change events which are becoming more prevalent. There's an argument potentially that some of those may not be unforeseen, so we may find ourselves in an insurance future which is where we're finding it more difficult to insure for particular events, and where we may need to consider self-insuring, and that will, of course, dictate then the nature of the insurance we may be able to hold versus what we self-insure. So I don't have any answers for that right now. It was more a more general briefing. As the legal agreement shapes up, of course, we'll bring that back to council for consideration, but that was just to give you a heads up on what's happening in that space.
Thanks, Amy. Any questions around that? Councillor Eastler?
Yes, thank you. I just wonder that, as well as assets, if the council was involved in a stock disease breakout or a pest plant infestation or something like that, are we covered for staff time and resources that is sort of spent in dealing with that as well?
I'd have to check that actually. I'm not entirely sure.
No.
Yeah.
Those particular ones would be handled by other government organisations, and they tend to reimburse us for our time and the use of our space.
Yeah.
That's what's been happening in the past. So our insurance is really covering the assets, our own infrastructure.
Yeah, I think in the likes of what's the plant? Sorry, it's gone right in my head.
Velvet leaf.
Velvet leaf. That was MPI.
There was a considerable amount of staff time spent on that though, and I'm not sure to the extent that we recovered it all.
No, we covered part of it. We basically did that. We went beyond EPI's involvement and to cover off the season and did the follow-up. But EPI, we claimed some, but not all.
Yeah.
So we actually did that. And that would be the case going forward. So no, there's not a lot of...
and coincidentally, actually, somebody else asked me a similar question yesterday, Councillor. So we might just firm up that response so that
it would be
quite
good
clear.
for the workshop actually to how we are managing our border intrusions, biosecurity or others.
Thanks. Councillor Beard?
Yeah, so just a little bit more elaboration on does so on a trust model. So what are we saying there? Is not everybody bringing out all their cards? Is that the concern that they're not bringing out all their assets that should be
No,
list that is needing to be ensured?
yeah, I think so. So the trust law is, referring to the fact that there is no agreement that underpins the approach that we take at the moment. In terms of, should there be a disaster of significant proportions where we're all looking to claim, we all have sublimits, and there's the question about, okay, what if some people need to claim more than others? How does that all work? We've not mapped, that's not been mapped out, and we should be doing that in peacetime, as it were, working out how what those agreements should be, as opposed to waiting till disaster hits and then.
So looking out for an earthquake that might be substantial in the South Island.
Yep. So that's not there yet. That's what we need to be putting in place.
Welcome, Bruce. And you have something to say?
Yeah, my apologies that I was a bit, so I could see from my agenda, my timetable, I was going to be trapped in Macau City, so which I was. So thank you for having me come in late. Amy, just a question. Really, it's a follow up to indeed Ellen's point. Is Aon the broker for the collective?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. That provides us, Ellen, with a bit of assurance that we have one broker across all the interests. In fact, for what it's worth, Aon is the broker for a number of collectives in the North Island. I'm not endorsing necessarily Aon. What I am trying to say here is that has been, if you're thinking about what we might call a high trust model, that gives us some protection that we have a common broker across the whole group. I think the challenge here is that actually the memorandum will through the broker help us set out actually what are our interests in effect under this collective, because it's sort of crazy. We get the benefit of we will get the benefit of a collective view with the underwriters, and yet we still have specific things that relate to us as an individual council. So to have that sort of process, general process set out would be really good. So I've always took this as being the trust sense being, we've done this all on a I've got to say, a gentleman's handshake. That's an appropriate language, isn't it? On a handshake basis, whereas this makes sense to have it down on the memorandum.
Yeah, and the question is whether a memorandum is the appropriate vehicle or whether it's a formal legal agreement. And that advice is being sought on behalf of the collective.
Yes. By the way, sorry if I can follow up, I presume occasionally the collective has tested the market for the broker. You don't have to have Aon.
No, I appreciate that, and I need to ask that question actually because I don't know. So
sorry, in my experience and working on both many collectives where we have Aon, they just happen to be common, but they have been tested in the market from time to time that their services be retained. So it's useful too.
Yep.
Thanks, Bruce. Councillor McCallum?
I think, understanding Bruce's comments, but isn't the point of this paper that we are actually going down a pathway to actually resolve a number of issues, firm up the agreements, work out some sort of procedural background that goes on board so that we know where insurances are in the bigger picture, we know when they start and stop and the risks around it, and that'll actually help us understand their business better.
Yeah, I think there's, if I understand correctly, there's potentially two parts to your question, and one is in relation to the way in which this group operates. I guess the insurance document will tell us one thing, but actually it's untested as to us all making multiple claims of significant proportions at the same time.
And we also have a two-step insurance policy within ourselves. So
yes,
I think
and yeah, what does that mean for us as well? So that's a piece of work that we need to do individually, and that we've referred to that we'll workshop with council going forward.
I'm happy to move that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Move that we note that report following Councillor McCallum, seconded Councillor Cook. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 3, procurement and contract management.
This is an update for you all on where we're at with our procurement and contract management process. As you'll be aware, Environment Southland has been developing its approach to procurement over the last couple of years. So in 2019, we developed our procurement policy. In 2020, we've developed our manual and training, which covers the Office of the Auditor General guidance, which was also released in 2020. We know that there is going to be interest from the Office of the Auditor General in how we've conducted our procurement through the Shovel Ready and Jobs for Nature programs, which came through last year. And this is just to inform you of the types of things that we've been using our government tendering process for, that our capacity and our capability has been developing, and that our approach is being followed through procurement.
Questions, comments? Preferably questions, actually. Bruce?
Look, it's and great. I endorse everything you say. Given my declaration at the last meeting that I was doing some work for the reference group around Jobs for Nature, and I probably should also make, given the items we have in front of us, that still is an active engagement on my part. So totally agree that the OAG, others are going to come hunting, and it's worthwhile. Let alone the fact that we probably want to know it. Can I just check for completeness of the bullet points under the core elements? When it comes to the financial side, the payments side, we've got the financial delegations. Do we have an electronic purchasing order system for all our creditors, and an appropriate sign-off on what can be quite complex claims, given the nature of these projects? What do we know of our controls around that, Amy?
Me, not an awful lot. I can answer right here and now, and unfortunately, our finance manager is not here today, but I can get an answer to that question.
I'm not perhaps so much worried about the answer, to be honest, but I just think for completeness, it would be useful for us just to be comfortable in the sort of, you've given us sort of an end-to-end snapshot.
Yep.
That we've actually got literally the release of the money out the door.
Sure.
Process right. The contracts here could be of the nature that requires, will require a bit of control and test just to get the progress payments and yada, yada, yada. It's the old story with contracts. It's worthwhile including that in our paper ultimately.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Councillor Cook?
Just what Bruce was asking, does that include developing internal capability and capacity? What are we going to do there?
Yes, we've run some training with members of staff who are key or core people involved in contracting and issuing contracts. We are developing a procurement advisory group. That's a very small group at the moment, and we're looking to get more members on that and drive that forwards. And looking forwards, it's still an area, particularly around the legal side, where we need to develop our expertise. So looking at whether that's a skill set that we need to recruit into the organisation or further continue to build.
We don't have a central purchasing officer or
No,
purchases.
no, that's through the delegations system at the moment. So the controls come through there in terms of what people are purchasing. Yep.
The critical thing, Neville, that I think we're all realising in a total purchasing in a total contracting process is actually the procurement phase is the more critical phase than anything else. So I must confess I wanted to go back and check. And we have previously approved the procurement policy and manual, correct? As a committee, have we seen that?
I don't know.
I'm looking around my colleagues here to know whether we have approved it.
I thought we had.
I think we have, haven't we? I'm sorry, I didn't have time to check my past minutes that we.
I think Neville's point's quite valid because we were trying to make, because my question, Madam Chair, if I can bring this into this, is procurement's one side of it, but the follow-up to get contractual support. There's a lot of contracts that have been led, but they failed once the implementation process came into play.
Yep.
And I think we need to be able to go back and say on a regular basis, are we actually fulfilling our requirements? So a central person saying, yes, the contracts are running smoothly, then the follow-up's right, and we're getting the delivery on time, and all the accounts and activity are actually matching the timelines that we set out.
Yep.
That needs to have some sort of oversight through the organisation. Now, whether it's one person or the GMs, I'm not too tier one, I'm not too sure, but I think procurement is only part of the discussion, and I can
Yes.
give you contractual agreements that have gone pear-shaped.
Yep.
But the first part was done honestly and done well.
Yep.
So I think we need to go back and make sure that we are happy from end to end on this process. I
Yep,
think
so,
Neville's got a good point there. We need to make sure that it's actually settled. But I think we need to look at that policy just to make sure that we have captured that as well.
sure,
I might suggest that if we break for a morning tea break, that we have a quick squiz through the minutes if we got a chance, Mel, and see if we can cover that off today before we leave. It's not too much of an imposition, sorry, Mel. Anything else on that then? We might revisit it if need be, but that, noting that report.
I'll move that we note the report, Chair.
Second that.
Thank you, councillor Cook and councillor McCallum. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carries, thank you. Sorry, we looked it up through. Item 4, Health, Safety and Wellbeing Management System Report.
can I just firstly note, given the timing of this meeting, we've not been able, and the timing of when papers need to come to you all, this paper does not reflect the full quarter, so we're about 2 weeks shy of that from a data point of view. I'll take the report as read unless there's any questions, but would just like to point out a couple of things. Unfortunately, we're losing our current health, safety and wellbeing partner. She is moving on to other vocational interests and is unfortunately and sadly for the world of health and safety, I think, leaving the health and safety arena, which is unfortunate for everybody. But I can tell you that we have been recruiting this week, and I'm hoping to make an offer to someone else today. And also, just in our activity report, given the great work that Michelle Carter has been doing for us, we've arranged to have an audit of our practices. It will be an informal audit, but an audit of our practices coming up in June, and that will highlight any gaps and areas for improvement going forwards from there.
Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was a little bit disappointed to see 3 intimidation incidents. You don't have to give me the detail on it, but I was disappointed that those were there. I think we need to do that better somehow, in some way. The rest of it I could understand, but that one was one that stood out.
On the back of Dunedin City Council's week.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, those are difficult for us to control, I guess, in a way. And it's about, because, that's people coming to us. I can say that, we had a member of the public call who was rude on the phone, who's known for behaving in that way, and they've been, a controllers that we've advised them only to contact us in writing. And a similar person known to council was rude to a member of staff in our reception.
Apologies.
And that's just recently been investigated, and we have an action there to write to them about their behaviour. And a member of the public was unhappy about how one of our vehicles was parked on the side of the road, and it was parked legally and okay, but we've been able to work with a landowner so that we can park off the road in that particular location. And we've also advised our staff that, if they are able to get the registration numbers of vehicles, we might be able to, actively pursue conversations with whomever it is that has the issues.
Councillor McLeod.
Just in regards to intimidation, obviously, most people know there was an incident at a rather large groundswell with me and a member of the public And when that sort of risk side of things, and obviously council as well, is there a connection, should we actually be recording those as councillors?
Yes.
And like this is for employees, but is this the whole council, so that there is a connection, that there's data that's happening to us as well?
Yep, we would like to know and understand that, and, equally, if you are on council business, I'd be hoping that when you are going into situations or on the council business, you're doing a risk assessment before you go, because actually, intimidation is a
Listening to risk assessment, don't they, Jerry?
yeah.
In the car, a risk, so, but it's just more of saying that there should be information there, saying, hey, this person has got an issue and he's obviously been involved. It's just to get that connection, that it's not just the employees here.
Yeah, but also making sure that you have the support as well and the tools.
So to speak.
Yep.
Maybe it's also not clear to councillors what our procedure should be
Well, that's the thing, I said,
if we have an incident, and we've got consultations coming up. And the regional forum
It's hard to draw the
conversations.
line, if you don't mind me saying so, because some can be just a strong argument of opinions,
Yeah.
and there's some good, healthy discussion, but firm but total intimidation is when you find that it's way outside, or the language is actually inappropriate. There is a line there, I don't know where that line is sometimes, but sometimes you go, well, that's just Joe being Joe. He needs to blow off, and I just had to take the call, but other times it's like, no, hang on, you're getting past that, you're getting into a personal space stuff.
Yeah.
So we maybe need to pick up on Jeremy's point, Madam Chair, we may need just to remind ourselves, because I hadn't thought about it from a council perspective as such. Maybe we should just think, actually, we may need to think about responding to staff when we find ourselves in a position that is not where we think we should be in our roles. Or being treated in a way that's not fair to our roles.
We would be really happy to workshop that with you.
Councillor Cook?
Just taking up from what Lloyd was saying, I'm just saying anything, it's actually not unusual, I was going to say normal, it's not normal, but it's not unusual for elected people such as ourselves to be the subject of strong argument, if you put it that way. That is the way of the world, and I can't expect the council to be responsible for that. Council staff are in a totally different position, whereas they're servants of council and the public. They're legally and morally they're in quite a different position, and we need to actually be able to deal with that. Whether you could extend that to councillors, I don't know, because it's not. It's not unusual. I've been abused by the odd
Doesn't mean it's right.
from a particular part of the Invercargill area on a couple of occasions. In fact, he corners me on his tractor every time I go down that way. But that's the way he operates all the time, and you accept that as, it's not physical confrontation.
I might.
The reality is, sorry, can I?
Yes, you may.
There's a point of that, like we get strong debate, but then when you're getting right in your face and see the whites of their eyes and their lips are trembling, then you feel, I'm not going to back down. We need to know that, hey, if something did happen, what's the council? Because the council should be protecting us as much as the employer. There's a point, I think there should be an overarching point of that. And maybe it's just more of saying to understand, and it should be recorded. And maybe it needs to, because this person we obviously know that he has talked to other people, and just say, well, there could be the next person, new person come along and end up in the same situation. So it's just being recorded. So just be wary of the way people discuss things. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Everybody knows.
Thank you. Councillor Cook, one more comment?
Staff have had training, as I understand it, in conflict de-escalation. Perhaps the councillors need to have some of that as well. I'm not joking. It's actually a skill which you can develop.
Yes, and I think there's two issues perhaps here. There's the fact that we might need, as councillors, a process if we feel intimidated or unsafe, but also what perhaps the definitions or whatever of those situations are, because a large gentleman yelling in my face is quite a different experience than a large gentleman yelling in your face, Councillor McCallum. And although a large and frightening or a small and frightening gentleman yelling in my face. And just to take up your point, Councillor Cook, about it not being unusual for some individuals. I'm not sure that I think that is okay though, just because it's not unusual.
I wasn't saying it was okay.
So anyway, we'll have two quick comments from Councillor Isler and Bruce, and then we'll move on. Thanks.
First aid training, and if they do, that should be extended to the councillors, because I'm out and about a lot, and first aid training is always for the benefit of somebody else rather than personally. And just wondering what the possibility of that might possibly be.
Look into that.
Bruce?
Sorry, just one comment question. I think, I might say this, but I think it's wise that we all do. We need to remember, of course, health and safety is as much for us as well, for members, as it is for staff. The health and safety framework has to fit all of us. It's interesting because I sometimes get into lots of these discussions, we all quite rightly think about staff without thinking about councillors, so I'd say. Amy, have we ever gone to the point of dealing with an abusive ratepayer by saying we won't deal with them anymore?
I don't know if we've gone right to that situation and whether we've had a situation that has necessitated that. I can certainly check with our rates officer.
It's not so much a case of have we. I'm just wondering if we have thought through and considered whether we would do that. Another engagement. It's been agreed that a particular ratepayer in a totally different context is got to the point where whether it's a councillor, whether it's staff, we can't deal with this person, and we have dealt with it that way. Second case where we have said the only way you can deal with this is by writing to our lawyer, and all contact back through you will be through the lawyer. We have done that, by the way, in consultation with the Ombudsman. This is a legoima and a good process approach. Hopefully we're not in that situation in Environment Southland, but I'm just wondering whether have we used it or exercised that option?
Not to that extent, but there is one individual that we've asked only to correspond with us in writing. Yep. So
It's been a trespass order.
And a trespass. Okay, cool. So we've gone to that extent.
Same individual? No.
Could be.
You always want to be the last resort.
I think it's a matter of course, we've tried to keep communication open, but we felt that the behaviour, especially in the foyer here, on the particular incident I'm thinking about, was inappropriate. He was written to and asked not to come in to the premises, which was actually a bit difficult because of his community position. But we made the point because it was a safety issue for staff. And that whole area has actually been looked at because there are some risks there because we're split on both sides of the foyer. That's one of the upgrades we're going to look at going forward is to have safe areas for staff.
Yep,
and that's why that's changed out there too. It's more like a bank now than what it used to be. So it's part of protection.
Oh, and the perspex that went up with COVID's an added layer, and we added CCTV last year, which is as much of a disincentive as it is to capture what happens during an incident. And I just come back to the risk point that Bruce was making, and just encouraging you all to think that when before you're engaging, notwithstanding that people might collar you when you're out and about, but if you are going to events, that those risk assessments are happening, and you're considering what might happen in these situations, and seeing what you can do to plan for them up front as much as you can.
I think the discussion's been fulsome and interesting. Would somebody like to move that report be noted? Somebody other than Councillor McCallum, just Thank you, Councillor Beard. Seconded by Councillor McCallum. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Yes, and there are a couple of actions from that, so we'll follow those up. Item 5, the information management update.
This is just an update for OPAC on where the information management program is at. You will see from the report that through the data stewards team, we've identified a number of projects, and the key project that the group are working on at the moment is the contacts program, recognising that data is one of the most valuable resources that we have, and that good quality data can assist us in improving our relationships with our customers. And so the aim of the program, is increased contact reliability, making sure that we're reducing the amount of duplication, and that everybody's operating in the same manner, and we've got reliability of data in the system. So there's a number of activities that are happening there. It's being driven out of the IT team, but there is a contact management team that's sitting around that, and that we have got contact training in place at the moment, and we've been through about half the staff in terms of getting them training. We've had, probably a bit, half the staff, about 75, and the response has been extremely positive, and accepted through the organisation. So we're just working through that at the moment.
Questions? Councillor McCallum?
I'm a little bit unsure of where this is going. And the reason I say that is, I'm not sure if our back room, if I call it that, is actually as smart as it can be. I know that we could have 1,500, 2,000 sentimental raising consents come in, and I'm not sure whether we've got, from day one, the back room organised for that, because through that system, the way you put it in is the way it actually comes out for reporting and monitoring and reporting back to not only to ourselves but to government. Some organisations I've been involved in, as soon as you ring up and make contact, your file is basically sitting there. It's a German system that drives you nuts, but when it's in place, it actually works very, very well. I don't think when I interact with this organisation, they actually see my business or my contacts through. And there's sort of like it's parked in about 4 or 5 different places, that it gets lost between systems, and when you send in similar forms and the only difference is the date, it gets lost and mismanaged and they don't understand what it is. So I'm not totally convinced that we've got that as well managed as we can. And if we were building it from ground zero, I think we'd have a different system. So I'd like a bit more assurance that we're actually going to make those fundamental changes. It means that we can handle data capacity and reporting through, because the government's asking us to do more and more.
Yep.
In a smart and efficient way. I understand there's been quite a lot of labour system sitting in there to actually do that, or the data's in different places and you've got to match it and multi-layer it to get some sense. And I think we need to have that so that whoever it is in the team can go in and get the relevant information quickly, see what's going on, especially on a business or whatever, and understand what, and add the information that's needed to keep that file up to date. I don't think it's there.
No, it's not, and it's a large piece of work that we need to do, and will require investment to do that going forwards. But we do know that within the system that we have, there are, because we've not had defined protocols for entering data. There's an awful lot of duplication and doubling up. So what we're trying to do is standardise that first before we streamline the system.
Have we got a good roadmap of where you want to go down that track?
Not mapped out.
Because if we know where we're going and,
Yep.
and we can put those steps along the way,
Yep.
that's easy, but if we're just doing, well, we'll do this bit and do that bit, when we don't have a direction
Yeah.
or a aim, so that we have a, so expectation of our systems,
Yeah.
then it's going to be very hard to actually make investments and then make the changes that are needed.
Yeah, I mean, we started the piece of work through the ESWA program last year, year before, around standardising, adopting a lean process over the consenting process, which looks at exactly the documents and the process of information through the process as well, and the systems that sit there and support that. But that has slowed, so we're not there yet in terms of finalising that actually. And we've had key members of staff who've been involved in those projects leave the organisation.
So Bruce?
Yeah, maybe I'm probably going to tackle the same question from a slightly different angle, which was I just wondered what the big picture is. This seems to me, I don't have any trouble, by the way, with the idea of thinking about matters as being data stewards, and it seems to me that we've got a particular program here that is tackling, a core area around essentially dealing with the customer, if I can call it that. But we have got those 7 areas of capability improvement. Where does this fit with our past initiatives? I've sat here and listened to IM strategies. We've had Effectus report to us. Has it all been banked? Have we made gains out of this? Is this the next stage of development, or is this a replacement for what that has been?
Oh, no, it's part of it. Actually, in order for us to, work across those full 7 areas, that requires significant resource, effort and, effort and energy, and we've not had the resourcing to be able to put into that.
So I think perhaps what I'm asking is that past effort, the stuff that we've heard from, stopped?
No, it's still going on, but as with most of the ESWA programs, because we've been trying to do the business improvement on top of business as usual. People have been spread pretty thin, so it's how do we use the resource that we've got in order to be able to, I guess, divide and conquer, and where do we best spend our effort and energy for the time being. I mean, we have spoken to council before in terms of looking at our, what's our direction of travel going forwards. We're looking at moving towards integrated catchment management, but there are some fundamental shifts that sit behind that in terms of becoming more efficient and effective, more customer focused, which requires, it's not only change in behaviours, but it's change in systems and approach, but we do need to invest in order to be able to make those gains as an organisation.
So there was a structure internally which was overseeing essentially an information management strategy. We had a bigger, longer name for that, which I can't quite recall. And that had some mapped out intentions to measure our development of maturity.
Yep.
And so that is still all ticking over in the background.
The group has, I think there should have been, I need to check when the last audit was done, so there should have been some audits. The former corporate services director, I think, was still meeting with Effectus, but I have not. I don't know where that is at. I can find out though.
It doesn't have to happen today. To be honest, it got off my radar, but when I read this, I was just keen to know that actually it's really, again, following through on your question, Lloyd, where has all that effort gone to? And actually, my question I wrote down was, what have we been able to put in the bank? What have we actually gained?
Yeah.
Because I'm assuming that's the case, because I don't have any trouble, as I say, with actually this particular initiative.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see it plugged into the bigger picture, and at the moment I don't think we've seen the bigger picture for a while. Sure,
yeah, okay, fine. I'm happy to bring that back next time round. I guess the only thing I'd say to that is, we are not advancing on a wide front.
No.
We are focusing the effort of the staff and the resources that we have in this area, which we think is a key one in terms of being able to make a difference.
Absolutely, I can be very you'll comfort me with that bigger picture, just so I know where this fits. And I get the point that we have to prioritise, no trouble. But then I'd also like to understand what's the opportunity cost or risk of that prioritisation.
Yep.
What are we not doing, given we had a broader, grander scale of developing our maturity?
And I think, if I follow on from that, I think there's some stuff coming to us, at least we actually bank it in the right way. In other words, unless we file it in the right way in our system, it's going to not be able to be utilised. And we've got farm plans coming in, and I don't know what they look like, they could be chapter by chapter. I'm not sure what the detail is, but there's going to be a lot of commonality of data in there. We've got some sort of tracing of loads and stuff off farms. So there's a number of things that are coming at us that even just with water metering that's coming in electronically, that's been spoken about, there's stuff coming in that's been collected, but I don't think we've actually got a good handle on being able to retrieve and get summary reports, let alone report to external parties, as well as I'd like to, and as fast as I'd like to.
And a primary step in there is making sure we're attaching the right information to the right person.
That's right. But the other thing is because we're going into a wider catchment perspective and you're going into a different framework going forward, especially in the next couple of years, we're going to be talking about different groups of people, and they've never contacted us before, never been involved with us through consenting or compliance before, but now we may need to know them on a personal basis. You're talking 7,000 or 8,000 contacts, or subcontacts of that. It's going to be quite a big picture, and I just want to make sure we're ready for that.
Yep.
Okay, I'm happy to move that we note the progress report.
Second.
Bruce, all those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried, thank you. Item 6, economic recovery projects. Welcome, Ellie and Paddy. Nice to see you. Do you want me to get out of the way?
Should be able to see it over there.
I can see it here, but I don't want to be in the way.
No, you're right.
I'm large and imposing and I don't want to get in the way. Or be intimidating. Thanks, Ellie. Take it away.
So, good morning. We're just going to give you a verbal update today on some of the COVID economic recovery projects that we've got going. So I'm going to start with a little bit of an overview of the projects that have come into the biosecurity and biodiversity team, and then Paddy's going to update you on the catchment ones. So all of the projects all of the funding that's come into biodiversity is now under the Jobs for Nature banner. When we first started talking to you about them, they had various different names, but everything now that's coming to bio is a Jobs for Nature project. So we have currently got 6 different projects that have been funded for Jobs for Nature. We're working with 4 different funding agencies on those projects. So we've got 2 that have come in from the Ministry for the Environment. They include one of the biggest ones, which is the Biodiversity Action on the Ground project, which is a 5-year project and equates to 6 million over those 5 years. And then we have the Regional Fish Passage one, which is a smaller project. Both of those have a little bit of co-funding from Environment Southland, where as part of that we are putting in funds towards it. We have 2 from the Department of Conservation. One is the Weeding Fieldlands Buffer, which is a 2 calendar year project, or both the DOC ones are 2 calendar years from the signing of the contract. There's no Environment Southland funding within that project, but we will be continuing our normal projects which support that work. We have a second one from the Department of Conservation, which is our Indaria work. Now we've entered into the agreement for that one and we've started recruitment for it, but we're still waiting for the formal announcement from the Minister before we can do all the press releases and really start ramping up the coverage for that one. So we have entered into a formal contract with the department. Then we have our Predator Free 2050 one, which is through Predator Free Southland. And again, Environment Southland has got a little bit of funding tagged to that as co-funding. And our MPI work on wilding conifers. So of the 6 projects, we've got quite a lot going on and quite a lot of work underway. So anything in green is work that we have finished, anything in yellow is what we're currently focusing on, and then the boxes in white are the ones that will be next stages on. So Biodiversity Action on the ground is going really well. We've now got 4 staff recruited, 3 of whom have actually started last week and sort of taken on a lot of that project management role. We've done a full review of the high value area programme, which councillors will remember is our ecological surveys that we do out for the community. Part of this project is going to be taking the scale of that from doing maybe 20 a year to doing lots a year, and lots of very big ones a year. So we've had to have a really good look at how we do that. And we have just put out a big procurement process to try and find the ecologists and the contractors that will be able to do that work and scale up that work. So that's currently underway. Te Marama have also started their recruitment process. So part of this project is that we're going to be bringing in, we're helping support their biodiversity program. So somebody will be employed at Te Marama. And so we're focusing on that, the procurement, and then starting the grants and schemes. So working with landowners, people we know that have got high value biodiversity on their properties, that have either previously applied for Environmental Enhancement Fund or we're aware are looking for Environmental Enhancement Funds. So we're starting that work and making sure that we have got work on the ground beginning to happen. The Regional Fish Passage 1 procurement is all completed. We've managed to find a really good contractor. They're going to start work down here in April. So we've found 54 sites to start working on this year, where we'll start actually doing the fish passage remediation, and that should start in April. And again, we're providing support to Te Marama, and they're doing some procurement to get a contractor to make sure that we can include Mātauranga Māori and Māori values into our assessments of which fish passages and priorities of which ones we should do first. So the project's going really well. Weeding Fiordlands Buffer has kicked off with an absolute roar and a bang. It's fantastic. We've got, I think it's now 40 different tourism people working out in Fiordland doing weed control. We've got heaps of contracts, different tourism operators. It's going really well and really effective so far. And Daria, as I said, we're still waiting to be able to really start announcing it publicly, but we have started recruitment. That's for somebody who's going to sit in my team and really make this project happen, because it's going to be so big that we can't do it as part of business as usual. As soon as that's complete, we'll start working on recruitment and training. We're going to be training divers up, so taking people from the Tiana community, other struggling communities, giving them the opportunity to train as a diver and then become a scientific diver. So there's quite a lot of work to work through to get make sure we've got the right training, the right health and safety in place, and we'll be working with Tiana operators to provide that training as much as possible. And then also the University of Otago will be helping us get them up to the right scientific level for diving.
Just a minute of interest, what depths are they working at?
Goes down to about 2 to 3 metres maximum.
So it's not big depth.
It's not big depth, but they still need to be trained up to a really high level.
So is it tanks or is it just scuba?
It's tanks.
Sorry.
So we're hoping to have divers in the water and all that underway by August, which will be really good for the next Undaria season. Predator-free Southland, we are working towards our year 1 milestones, but that box in red is that part of what we need to do this financial year is trying to find co-funding to match the Predator-free 2050 long-term funding. We've currently got a shortfall of 3 million in co-funding that we're struggling to find, so we're applying for as many different funding streams as we can, things like lotteries, to try and find that shortfall. And work out how we're going to progress if we can't find that co-funding that's required to free up the Predator-free 2050 funding. And then our wild and conifer work, going really well up at Mid-Dome. We've had a whole heap of, all of the aerial work has pretty much been done, and then there's just the groundwork and some of the spot spraying that needs to be done. We've also completed procurement for a Bluff Hill motor pahui. So we've got contractors ready to go working on the hill. So you might start seeing trees disappearing off Bluff Hill. It's going to be quite visual. and that's being run by Invercargill City Council, and they're doing quite a lot of comms around that, but you may get questions on why we're removing trees from Motorbury. And that control work should start in April. That's kind of the status of all of our projects. I can take questions on that now, or we can pass to Paddy and then do questions at the end, whichever you prefer.
We might take some questions now, because I suspect there are some. Excuse me. Graceful. It's quite hard when your feet don't touch the ground. Move the chair along. Still need a cushion. Thank you, Councillor Easter.
Yeah, thank you. Is the under area control only in Fiordland?
For this project and for this funding, it's only in Fiordland. We do need to have a serious thinking about how we look after the marine environment outside of Fiordland, and if we what sort of work we should be doing. We have recently done some work down in Rakura, and there's been a biosecurity. We've used the Biosecurity Act to remove some pots and clean them, and a bit of Rakura to try and protect Rakura as well.
Councillor Roy.
Now that an area is, I understand, reasonably well established in Bluff Harbour, is that right? And how many vessels go crayfishing or pleasure, whatever, round to Fiordland? And what do we do to those skippers or boat owners to sort of require what we need to require?
Yep. So the requirement is that they must have a clean vessel pass, and they must have a clean hull, and all of their gear must be clean. So the requirements are that if you are leaving the Undaria area at Bluff, you're leaving that to go into Fiordland or to go into around Rakura, you must be clean. We do 2 compliance trips a year. Any boat that we find during that compliance trip, we will dive under, and if we need to progress conversations with those skippers, that's what we do. Ministry of Primary Industries also do a check of boats in Bluff Harbour, and if there are boats that they know go to Fiordland or they think are high risk, they will let us know, and then we will talk to the skippers before they go, saying you must clean your boat before you leave.
Is it working?
We could always do more compliance and checks. It is a really hard one. We are finding, when we've been in, we find quite high compliance, but then we also find issues.
Have we ever brought proceedings against anybody that might be breaching our field and under area protocols?
We have used the Biosecurity Act to do notice of directions. We've used 2 boats that have been ordered out of Fiordland. We are currently working through the potential of taking proceedings, and council will get a full update on that at a different time probably.
It would just probably occur to me that compliance would lift considerably if an example was made.
I've got Councillor McCallum and then myself.
Thank you. Kelly, I'm aware that we spent a considerable amount of money on a what they call a floating harbour to actually be able to fly in. It was a joint project between us and NPI. My understanding is it's being trained, but it's never actually been used. Should we follow up what Councillor Roy was saying? Should we be using that or facilitating that a bit more? I think we need to be more public in this area, and our biggest risk is that we seem to be soft on non-compliance, especially those that come from a long way away. We need, while it's a Pacific area in New Zealand, we actually need to somehow try and get the message through. This is actually important for New Zealand, and we need to protect it as best we can.
So the occasions when we have found a marine pest or suspected marine pest in Fiordland, we have considered as part of our actions whether bringing in the fab dock and inflating it and doing the control in Fiordland is the best option or not. On both the occasions, it was decided that because of the situation, it was better to try and get those boats to Bluff, so the cleaning happened at Bluff, so they were ordered to leave the area straight away, remove the biosecurity risk to Fiordland, and then get the cleaning done elsewhere so that we weren't having to do it in Fiordland. That's still the preferred option in most cases. If we were unable to do that and order that boat out, then we would bring the FAB dock in. Or if it was something we're moving the boat because it was something that was releasing spores at the time, we would definitely bring the FAB dock in. So we try to be to make sure that we're using the right tool at the right time and trying to make sure that we're doing compliance in the way that's going to protect Fiordland as much as possible. But it's definitely always a consideration, and it's great that we've got that FAB dock there. If we hadn't been able to get this last boat out, if they hadn't left, our secondary action was going to be that we were looking at bringing the FAB dock in, and then the cost of doing that would have been part of the compliance activity and would have been charged back to the owner.
Thanks. Councillor Beard.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So just on these procurements, like bringing more people in to do this work, what sort of tenure can we offer them? And what sort of contracts are we, the time frames are we thinking?
So the procurement for the Biodiversity Action on the ground and the fish passage one is until the end of 2025. So they're 4 and a bit years, depending on the dates that they're signed. And that's the same for the staff that we've got recruited under these projects. It is for the term of the funding that we can guarantee those contracts for. The Fiordland one is the Fiordland weeding one is a little bit more complicated because it's based on tourism workers and seasonal stuff. So there's lots of more casual type contracts that's based around their availability. But again, the timing is based around the funding. So that the maximum of that is 2 years. And the wild and conifer one, I can't remember off the top of my head, but again, it's based on the funding. So we offer the maximum contract we can based on the funding.
So they understand that, so if it's a two-year funding from MPI or from MNB, then after that 2 year period, they understand that there's no likelihood unless it's a new contract.
Thanks. Councillor Cook.
My question's been answered, thank you.
Just one question from me was, is there any potential, or might have been considered, TAMI involvement in the Untitled upskilling of divers?
Part of that one is there is a whole pathway that we need to work with Ngāi Tahu on trying to reach Maori communities and making it open to everybody. We haven't specifically put a role in for Te Marama. I don't believe in that project, but it's something that could be considered if it's useful. But yeah, we have very much trying to, within that, there has to be a pathway to get to Maori communities that are out of work.
Councillor McFarlane.
Just in regards to the high value areas, the review, is this, was that also, okay, you're dealing with existing ones, but is this to source out new areas as well? So have we engaged other people, the owners of this land? I'm just saying, was it a scope of South and saying where there is more to be done?
So the review.
Engaging with more people as well.
Yeah, so the review looked at how we were offering the programme and how we were doing that with the intention that we needed to get to more landowners, talk to more landowners, and that so we're only going to reach our targets of mapping if we've got lots and lots of landowners on board. So we need to have really good comms, really good engagement. We'll have 2 people dedicated to working with landowners one-on-one to have those conversations. So that is part of how we will be achieving the programme.
So just another quick, so is there a timeline, like, I'm sort of saying that there'll be people who own land will be obviously getting called and saying, hey, you might have an area on your farm. So I mean, that's obviously an interesting discussion to have. And I'm just saying, is there a timeline when that's happening, that we're going to be, is it reasonably?
It will be happening over the next 5 years, and we will be trying to get out to people that we know are interested straight away, and we will be trying to get really good comms together. Now we've got the team in place, and they've only been in place 2 weeks, so it will take them a while to gear up, but they will be working on putting a proper comms plan together and trying to get the message, starting to get the message out as quick as possible.
Thanks. Bruce. Oh, sorry, Ellie. You
I was going to say, so it's probably important to know that our project is still very much around voluntary compliance, and it's not linked to the creation of significant natural areas. This is very much around trying to help landowners understand what they've got on their property. But there will be an option for landowners to use that information going forward if at some point the district councils need that information. It's very much, we've kept it in the voluntary space, we're not requiring this to happen.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, and of course I've already declared interest here, and Ali's put up with me for a couple of hours last week, poor lady, so she survived, she came back for, which is good. Ali, you mentioned, and I want to ask a systems question relative to the role of us at OPAC here, which is, you keep mentioning projects, which this obviously is. Are you building the project management system as you go, or are we plugging into an Environment Southland system, number one, and number two, what sort of oversight does the executive leadership team have, both in support of you and in management of the risks with this, which for me is always the fact that we've got the government on the other side, and somewhere between now and the next election, this will be looked at closely, not just us, but everybody.
That's quite a big question. Okay, so and Paddy, please chip in if I get this wrong. We currently have this set up, so they're being run within the operational teams, the different projects depending on the technical and specialist area. We have oversight in terms of our normal direct reporting lines, but we've also had the formation of a program management office, which is currently being contracted out to Boffa Miscall because we don't have the internal staff to do it. They're helping us with any project management, reporting requirements, contracting requirements, trying to make sure that we're keeping track of everything we should be doing.
And there's also an overall governance group for these projects that's been formed here.
Yes, yeah, okay, thanks, Paddy.
Yes, you may.
Welcome, Wilma.
I think too, for your interest about the oversight for executive, there is a governance group which is chaired by the chief executive, which has the executive GMs on it. There has an external in the form of Rob Buchanan. So that group is and Tammy is also on that. So that's meeting quarterly. We have another meeting coming up in a couple of weeks' time. And so there's the operational side, which Bob is also assisting with, and they're providing secretariat services for us for that group at the moment. The intention is that there's a project or program management office established in the organisation, which we've actually asked Boffa, and they've just come back to us with a proposal to assist us in setting up. So that will be handed over from them to that when that's established. So yes, exec has oversight, and, but also there's a broader governance structure there, and actually that structure should be reporting up through here once we get into the sort of, we've had the first set-up meeting for that.
There's music to my ears. It's a control question. You can see that I'm interested in here that actually really, these are, to me, valuable gain areas for us. We just need to have that control over. And I guess the other thing I'd ask to either of you three is, I'm conscious of the significant reporting milestones back to our funding partner. Are they causing us any challenges? Are we keeping up to date?
If they kept the templates the same.
Don't worry, Ali's told me you keep going. Yes, that's right.
They are fairly well intense to go through, and very short period of time for our ones, the shovel-ready ones. We've got 5 working days to get them done by the end of the month, and we've got 10 of them, so it is very intense. It takes a long time.
So I think that's another thing that we should just recognise, the transactional cost. I presume they're priced into our budgets in terms of our time.
That was my
But I'm
question.
just thinking about the collateral effort that's required. I was about to say cost, that's too loaded a word, but effort that's required internally to deliver, just literally deliver on the program, let alone the actual work itself being done. Thank you, appreciate that. Thanks, Wilma.
So the intention, Madam Chair, was that the governance group would report to the finance OPAC meeting. I'm just thinking about the need perhaps also to cover risk at this meeting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I would see that as the case, Wilma. There is a
Yeah, just
strong
listening to your
risk dimension
conversation.
to me as far as this is concerned.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, good point.
So, Madam Chair, can I just pick that up? So, if we're reporting to that degree, should that go through a committee?
Sorry, I'm not so quite certain.
Well, there's a number of reports that come up that we send on to government, basically, as a government department. Should that actually go through a committee, you know, retrospectively, just to have eyes on it, to see that that work is done? And the reason I say that is that there seems to be, within an organisation, if you know what's going on, you see the work that's going through, you have a better understanding of the work programs that are in place, and it gives staff more kudos that we've actually got an interest and an oversight on it. We don't get in the way of that, we don't write the report, but it's actually accepted as a report that has gone to government, and it's got a little bit more kudos behind it. Otherwise, it's just a staff report that doesn't go anywhere. So I'm just wondering,
I think Wilma's got it.
is there a system, or should there be a system that?
So just to reiterate, the governance group that is overseeing this will report through the Chief Executive to OPAC. The intention is that it comes to your quarterly financial meeting. The reports that Ali and Patty are doing, some of them are, well, in the case of Doc, almost weekly.
Daily. I'm not joking, we have a daily up that we
You've
have
got
to
an
fill
app.
in.
So this is not the level of reporting that even the governance group is seeing. It's seeing a rolled up reports, and those reports will be coming to you. I'm just interested in Bruce's comments as to whether we bring a risk report to this meeting in addition to the financial reports to the financial meeting. So we have created terms of reference, we've looked at the reporting framework that we want, we're meeting again in a fortnight's time, and the first financial reports I think will be coming to the next OPAC meeting. So, but that's certainly the intention.
I wouldn't want to create too much, too many reports or the need for there to be a split between the financial version of OPAC and the risk version of OPAC. If I could just give you a benefit of my view, and this is reflecting the work that I'm doing, so I'm potentially mixing my hats, but my question to Ali was, this is a jobs for nature, so there are two big core outcomes here for the Crown, jobs and sustainable environmental benefits. If Lloyd, there was a point that would be valuable for us as governance to understand, it's are we meeting those tests? Because that's actually the headline test that will be held now and into the future. It's what the sustainable land use ministers have, they organise themselves, are interested in. That should be,
Yes.
I think at a governance level, our concern, because you know you can see you won't want to give us an app printout or an app every day of what actually is the program. So I mean, for me, the risk structure is as much answered by actually what is the system,
Yes.
and the fact that we'll get a report
Yes.
back from that system back to us, read the governance group. We just want to see regularly because it gives me the confidence that our system of control and risk management is in place.
Yes, that makes sense. Yes.
So our governance meetings are designed to fit the quarterly finance OPAC meeting for that reason. And the first meeting which we've had and we've built in terms of reference and the reporting framework is so that we can report to you in this meeting.
Yep. We might move on to Patty then, if that's all those questions asked.
Right, so this is all now the climate resilience projects, but of course shown the video. So I'm just going to give you an update of where we're at and what we've got planned for the next 3 years. At the moment, we've got 4 projects that we're looking at this year, and those ones up there, the green is well on target, going very well. That's the Waiau River flood damage project that we've done. It's due to finish very shortly, in the next week or two. 750,000 from MB and 250,000 will come from ES. And going on the budgets and finances so far, looks like we might be under budget. Very good. Next one is Boundary Creek Stop Bank upgrade. That is due to start on just after Easter next week. It's only a small job, it's not a big one, but it's upstream from the tower. We're on State Highway 1 where they usually put the sandbags across when it's flooding, but also when when we had the floods in 2020, it actually overtopped that bank. It was designed that way historically, and also it didn't go into high ground, so it went around the end of it as well. So it has been a priority that we're getting that up to scratch now. And like I said, the 7th of April will start, but of course weather being in Southland is always an issue. So we feel that we'll at least get most of it up in place. The next section is the Matera Stopbank rock protection. That one is on the upstream of the old paper mill. There's a big section through there. Rock is always an issue that we've got over that way, but we've just found a new quarry that somebody's opening up as we speak, and we should be able to get that job done. Since the flood, we've been using an excessive amount of rock throughout the Matera river system, in fact around the whole of Southland, and it's becoming an issue to get supply. So we're pretty happy there's another quarry opened up there, and we've also had another one opening up further north, but it's going to be a bit too far away from that to cart there. So there's probably 3 quarries that will be supplying that job, and we're pretty happy with the way it's going to go. The next one is the Matera Stopbank upgrade. That's a stage 1. That's including doing the stopbank plus a rock protection on the other side of the river above the freezing works, and that's going to be commencing at the same time. There's 2 separate contractors doing it, but they're getting it all from the same quarries. And it's a stage program. The stopbank upgrade is not designed to be done till next year, next season. Moving forward, that's next season going to be huge. In the following year as well. So the first one is the Windham Stopbank. That's at the back of the Matera Township, where the stream comes down just as you go into Matera from Invercargill End. You'll go over the bridge, it's that stream there, and that goes up right along quite a fair way, and there's a stop bank on the town side of that, and we're upgrading that. It'll be lifted about 500 to 600 millimetres right through, and quite a big project. 1.5 million coming from MB for that, and we've got to come up with the 500,000. We've done all the surveys, we've get basically all the preliminaries of the designs been done, and we should be well and truly ready in the season next year to start, get it underway. Basically the same with all of them really. Gore Town Stop Bank, we were going to be doing that this season, but then through submissions and some of the comments we need to sort out a bit of stuff with GDC, because we've got to go through and remove a whole lot of trees and things like that through that area, and just got to work our way through that at the moment. There's a couple of nice specimen trees here which we feel will stay, but there's other ones that we're trying to, because it's such a narrow bank through Gore, it's very confined, and we're trying to keep it clear through there rather than having trees all over the place. So, and also a lot of trees on our stop banks, which is a definite no-no that we can't have. Next one is Windham Stop Bank. That's also programmed to, well, there's 2 stages in that. Stage 1 is January 2022 and then January 2023, and that's 1.8 million from MB for that, 625 from us. We've done tree clearing already, that's all been completed. There was a lot of similar sort of thing with what was in Gore, and everything else, preliminaries and surveys. We've got to do a lot of surveys and get the design sorted, and that's well underway, and we'll be all up and running next year to start on that. Open Stop Bank, that's here in town. That's a very small one, and it may not be actually a physical stop bank, it might be a retaining wall, which is probably more likely because it's very confined and there's a road, and it doesn't have to go up that high. So pulling underway again on that, getting just the final design, and like I said, well, I hope I stop bank upgrade, that's both sides up to above the railway lines here in town, just above the railway lines. The railway is high enough, so we're quite happy we've built up to each side of it. Programmed to finish in April 2022. That's a 2.6 million from MB, 875 from us. And been a lot of work done on that. There's more work to be done because we think there's an old pit by one of the Invercargill City Council's pump station. That was an old landfill area. And so we're getting bores done in there and I think we we've got pretty well covered financially, but that's a risk that we don't know the extent of that. So the Steed Street pump station, that's up in the yellow there. We programmed that to finish in April 2022. 2.6 from it's not MPI, it's MB, and 750,000 from us. We've had this all designed 2 or 3 years ago, but with NES, it's come through and the type of pumps where we're going to go in there, we were going to probably have cat food coming out the other end with the fish, so we've decided to change that. And the drawing up on the wall up here, which is 100% fish-friendly pump that we've got. It's the old Archimedes screw, but the way it's designed, it's inside a tube. It's actually the whole tube changed, so it can pick up the fish. Looks very good. One issue is due to COVID-19 and these pumps are manufactured in the Netherlands. There's been riots and there's been all sorts of things going on over there. I've heard my contacts that were doing all the design work and getting all the quotes and ready to give to me are now uncontactable. I can't raise them at all. And Waikato Regional Council is in a similar position and they've meant to have 2 on ships coming out, probably stuck in the sewers now. But and they've got another 2 audits, so we're just waiting on what's going to happen there. But at least the pumps themselves are the last things that go in. Just do our own structure and they just get lowered in into place. Just a slight risk there of the finish date on those.
Thanks, Patty. I've got Eric, Lloyd and Lloyd.
I just had a question about the Boundary Creek one north of the tower. There isn't any way to get over the sandbagging of the railway line and the Highway 1, is there? What we are also looking at in that area, the water that comes into that area comes under the rail lines because the rail lines are quite high.
Yep. There's 4 or 5 different culverts or bridges along that highway where it all comes through over the road and into that area. We're looking at now, hopefully with the way MB are talking, if we do have funds left over, we may be able to get another project set up. We're looking at floodgating those through there. GDC and Transit are very, very keen on us stopping the water's coming through there. And we've looked at it and it's not a onerous job to do that. That would help that part of it. And it would give us a lot more hours at the peak before it actually floods that area. My guys are working on that frantically at the moment, so we've got that in place further down the track that we might be able to go together and do that. But at this point in time, to stop sandbagging, they'd have to raise the road. There are other systems, shutters and things like that, but we feel that the best way to address that is to stop the water getting there in the first place.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty. Welcome, Chairman Horrell. Hope you're all ready for tap dancing now. Councillor McCallum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Patty, when do we actually say we can't get those pumps, because you've been on this case for a while to try and identify to get the pumps? And I suppose part of my background is the risk of of the servicing agent being on the other side of the world, and if we've got problems now, what happens in the future, and can we not take that design and redo something here in New Zealand that is easily, maintained and serviced, as it were. When are you going to make a call on that? Because I would say that's a pretty big risk, because you can't always guarantee that the dimensions of that pump will actually be the same if you had to put a comparable pump in.
Yeah, each pump is, those Archimedes screw pumps are designed specifically for that site, depending on how far they got to lift and all that sort of stuff. I've been in contact with other manufacturers at the moment looking at alternatives to, but nobody else really makes that 100% fish-friendly one. There are other types like the that we've got down there that they've made that are fish-friendly, but they're made for European conditions. And the biggest eel they have over there, like, is 700 to 800 mils. We've got them at 1.2 to 1.5, and they really survive. So we're trying to really concentrate to get the Archimedes screw design, so we can get past that issue. We'd like to say we've got these 100% fish-friendly ones here, but there are others made over there, but they don't make them enclosed. So there's pinch points all the way through. So we're persisting with this at this stage, but I'm looking at alternatives.
My follow-on to that different subject really is traffic control for all these trucks that are going in and out around the towns. There's been an issue in Auckland lately with the railway and traffic and stuff, road management. Because of the amount of rock you're actually carting, have we got that under control as far as our public is concerned?
Part of the contracts that we've set up is they've got to do traffic management, and usually transit or the local TA, depending on where it is, they specify what's got to be there, and they approve it.
Councillor Eastler?
Yeah, this is a picture in the fish emerging from the Archimedes screw, giddy, traumatised. The question was about walkways and cycleways that might go along the top of stop banks. So that sort of the Steed Street one is definitely that. That stop bank through there has been looked after and done part of the shovel ready, but by Invercargill City Council. And they've actually, with their design, has actually broadened it, the walkway on the top, so there's cycleway and walkway on that all the way through.
It's safer than it is.
Yeah, with the rail all the way down.
There's a
On the
risk
roadside.
of tumbling down into the
Yeah, so looking at the design that they've got it, it's not finalised yet, but there's a handrail all the way through. And Gore District are wanting to put their walkway on top of our new banks, so we're working with them on that.
And Councillor Beard?
Thanks, Madam Chair. So how are we able to check to ensure, I mean, we've known in the past what obviously the contractors have charged us for shifting rock around the province. So largely we've got some base data or base information. How are we ensuring that we're not going to be creating cost inflation by adding all this demand for rock to be shifted, and the contractors know there's a lot of work and they up the rates and we end up creating basically inflation in this market? Because South is not that short of work for trucks. How are we finding, or we are trying to find employment where there's a deficit, but there's not a lot of deficit to my understanding of truck movements in Southland. But so are we drawing any truck movements from out of the region or even field them to
Unfortunately,
Queenstown?
the contractors, every year under our BAU, they submit rates every year for rock and also for cartage, and we're basing that on their tenders as they're bringing them in, because also you've given us a fixed rate for the year for other works. So it's been negotiated, and they've stuck with it. All of them have stuck with it at the moment, and it's quite intense that they've got to submit these rates to us every year anyway.
So we're reasonably comfortable that they're not going to sharp us.
Well, if they're going to, somebody else will do it, because we know the rates.
Thanks. Any further questions for Patty?
Can I ask my systems question, please?
Certainly, Bruce.
There we go.
So, Patty, it's no different to the question that I asked Ali. I just what's the system around this in terms of overall control? This is plug into the project governance group process that
It all goes through that.
Yeah.
I think some of Ali's stuff's got to go through the governance group to get approved for payments. Ours don't, but it's still going to the governance group. We let them know, but they've given us such a short time window to get reports through that and it doesn't time in with the monthly meetings or anything like that, but it all goes to the governance group.
And look, and Alan's raised a good point, by the way. I'd want to endorse from a risk perspective in the total framework, how does the contractor market perform through this? Because it's not, the opportunities aren't just starting south. So I think the contractor market might well become very difficult for us to manage costs. Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Ali, your fine team are sitting behind you. Is there anything else that you wanted to add? Because you missed Ali's presentation, so is there anything else?
I'll get them to watch it online.
Oh, good.
They're both through watching it.
Unless you want them to sit through it all.
Yeah, no. Fascinating as it was, might be time for a cup of tea. So, thanks very much for coming, biosecurity team. Timing was, we were ahead of schedule, so I'm sorry about that. Doesn't happen very often. And so in the meantime, somebody like to move that
I'll move.
report. Thanks, Councillor McCallum, seconded Councillor McPhail. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried, and thanks you two. We might adjourn for a cuppa and a break, and then we'll come back at 1:45.